Welcome back to our channel. In today's tutorial, we are diving deep into the world of single sign-on, or SSO, using Security Assertion Markup Language, commonly known as SAML. If you're looking to enhance user experience by simplifying the authentication process across multiple applications, then stay tuned. Before we jump into the implementation, let's briefly discuss what SAML is and how it works. SAML is an open standard for exchanging authentication and authorization data between parties, in particular, between an identity provider and a service provider. In layman's terms, it allows users to log in once and access multiple services without needing to log in again at each service. For today's demonstration, we'll be using Java along with a popular library called Spring Security SAML. This library makes it easier to integrate SAML-based SSO into your Java applications. You can find the library in the Maven repositories. Let's start by creating a new Maven project. If you're using an IDE like IntelliJ IDEA or Eclipse, you can easily create a new Maven project through their respective interfaces. Make sure to include the required dependencies in your pom.xml. Don't forget to set up the Spring context, as this is essential for our application to operate correctly. Next, we will configure our Spring security settings. Create a new Java configuration class that extends Web Security Configurer Adapter. This class will help us define the security rules for our application. We'll also specify that we want to use SAML for authentication. Next, we need to set up the SAML configuration. This involves creating a bean of type SAML filter processing service provider and configuring it accordingly. We will also set up an entity ID for our service provider, which will be crucial in our SAML requests. Now, let's move on to creating the SAML metadata configuration. This metadata is essential as it contains information about the SAML service provider and identity provider. You'll have to use SAML2 metadata generator from the Spring Security SAML library. After configuring the SAML service provider, we now focus on the identity provider metadata. You will need a metadata XML file from your IDP, which you will parse to set up the configurations on the service provider side. This is commonly done by creating a metadata display filter bean. The next step is to set up the entry points for SAML authentication. You will define a controller that will handle SAML login requests and initiate SSO via the identity provider. In this controller, we'll implement the logic to handle the redirection to the IDP for authentication. Keep in mind that you'll be sending a SAML authentication request to the identity provider as part of the login process. After successfully authenticating with the identity provider, the user will be redirected back to our application with a SAML response. You need to define an endpoint that will accept this response. Let's create another method in our controller to handle this. In this SAML response method, you would typically decode the SAML response and validate the assertions. You might leverage the breakdown capabilities provided by the Spring Security SAML library to assist with this. Next, let's discuss how we handle SSO sessions. After you successfully authenticate a user and extract their details from the SAML response, the next step is to create a session in your application. This involves setting a session attribute and possibly redirecting them to their originally requested page. At this point, we should also implement logout functionality to allow users to log out from the application as well as the identity provider. Logouts in SAML are a bit more complex since they typically involve a backchannel logout request to the IDP. Now that we have the foundational pieces in place, let's incorporate some logging. During the development phase, you would want to log any issues for easier debugging. Integrating an appropriate logging framework into your application will provide insights into the authentication process and any challenges. Let's wrap up with a few important notes. Test the SAML integration locally and in a staging environment before deploying it to production. Ensure you have error handling in place and notify users appropriately if there are login issues. Also, remember to secure your endpoints. Since SAML involves sensitive information, use HTTPS to encrypt the data being transmitted. This can't be stressed enough. In conclusion, thank you for watching our step-by-step tutorial on implementing SSO with SAML in Java. This powerful integration not only secures your applications, but also enhances user experience. If you found this video helpful, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more content like this.